And thanks for joining us once again. As always, we will encourage you to always get interactive on our social network page on Facebook, Join News on TV, and also a handle we have on Twitter, Join News on TV. We'll have to continue a series we began last week with our top businesswoman, I Say, of the year, and we have in the studio Alberta Quarcoopoome, and she's written a beautiful book. I've just perused some sections of the book. I was doing that yesterday because she appeared last week, and it's titled The 21st Century Bank Teller. But more importantly, after just perusing the book, after all her experiences, having worked as a chartered banker, etc., and work in the microfinance industry as well as the banking sector for decades, she has a lot more to share with us. Now, I was just reading through your book, and especially on page 37, 38, you talked about check processes, etc. Critically, when checks are issued and the customer is a regular customer of a bank, and these days we have relationship managers, but perhaps there's not enough money in the account to be drawn. Can't you just pay whatever has been issued, knowing that there's a loyal customer of your bank and always will come somehow to credit its account someday?
Okay. We have a duty towards our customers. Likewise, customers also have a duty to the bank. And if you read the terms and conditions when you are opening an account, they have to make sure they issue checks based on the balances they have.
And as customers, that's what we don't do. We don't read the conditions.
And
okay.
yeah, I realize that. And when they have to issue checks and they don't have money, they have to do prior arrangements with the bank. And depending on the type of customer, the type of business they run, banks take the responsibility to help. But there have been occasions where certain individuals or businesses, especially in the SME sector, abuse the check system, and they issue checks to customers, and then they put off their phone because they know that if they don't have enough funds, would ask for them to confirm or make an arrangement. And that can also lead the bank into trouble. So depending on the type of customer, some customers have agreed amounts that even without you calling them, you can take very good discretion and issue and pay.
I just asked you that question because I had an interaction with my bank yesterday, and I happened to have issued a check for which I didn't have enough in the account. So and seeing it in your book just drew my attention. But these days we live in a period where customer service and the relationship you tend to have with your client is critical. At what point do we say somebody enters into a banking hall and the person either is dressed well or not dressed well, and so there's a certain reciprocal reaction from whoever is a teller or whoever is supposed to be the frontline staff? Right,
and that's one of there's a little chapter on
there's a
appearances
chapter.
Deceive.
Yes, and
so
it's on,
treat all customers
it's on chapter
fairly.
4, page
fairly,
41.
That's the point, because the customer's dressing has no bearing on the bank balance. And we see young people just look at people and have a perception about them. So in this book, we make sure that we let banks or tellers know that it is their duty to serve the customer however the customer is dressed, to treat the customer fairly. There have been people who are really dressed in fine clothes and have nothing in
like
their
me,
account.
sometimes I enter the bank, I have nothing. I'm only waiting for my salary to enter, then I get access.
Exactly.
But so you enjoin the frontline staff to make sure they respect our persons.
Exactly.
Is that it?
Exactly.
What sort of training do they go through?
Well, ideally, frontline people should have about a month detailed training before they actually go on the desk. And this involves attributes that they have to acquire if they don't already have it. And being honest, being knowledgeable, we teach them the basic banking principles so that they don't take decisions based on just logic, but based on banking principles. And these are some of the things we do. And then we teach them through the actual practice of tellering, receiving checks, spotting bad checks or suspicious checks. There is a chapter where checks, these days we have clone checks, erased checks, and all sorts of altered checks. And tellers are being trained to make sure that they have a good eye for these kinds of transactions, as well as customer service.
Okay.
That is the key.
So it could happen that, well, you could be somewhat deceived if you're a teller or behind the counter.
Exactly.
And so you just have to make sure you have an eye to look out for.
Exactly.
At what point then do we tend to have all these concerns, especially from top banking managers who say they experience shortages by their tellers consistently? What happens within those transactions?
Yes, we train tellers once again to make sure that they take the job they are doing carefully and seriously. They should serve one customer at a time, being polite and yet avoiding distractions, because some of them get carried away whilst conversing. It's good to be nice and even do a little cross-selling, but sometimes they are careless. At the end of the day, they either do a shortage or an overage, and in both cases it is dangerous because it has reputational damages to the bank. And at the end of the day, even during the day, in the chapter, they are being told to do intermittent cross-checking and balancing, so that if you've made a mistake like around 12 o'clock, you notice it and call the customer. Supervisors are also being asked to do this intermittent checking online to see where what they are doing, so that if there's extra money, they bring it back into the vault, and so on.
So you're saying it's all about customer service and how you relate to your clients.
Exactly.
At what point do you identify this is a a top-end customer, so to speak, somebody who perhaps belongs to a certain category, but has not accessed certain high-end services? For example, you go to some of the top banks, and I believe that you worked in one of the top banks as well. They have certain categories of products or services that have been targeted to certain clients because they look at the account and then you are easily approached, etc. But some of them would not access any of those services. But when they come, they will join the queue, etc. Are you obliged to give them some preferential services because you know this is a regular person who comes to the bank, has so much in the account and is a respectable member of whether your bank or your society? Yes.
The private banking or prestige or whatever name you are giving to these
private
accounts,
prestige banking.
Exactly. Excellence and all that, prominence banking is for high-end customers. Of course, some of them would not access it because it goes at a fee. They don't join the queue and there are certain preferential treatment given to them. But as a teller or a customer service person in the banking hall, when we are supposed to browse the transactions of certain customers and spot them. We speak to them, they don't want to access it, but you just make sure that they are comfortable. But you have to do these things professionally because every other person is also important. And occasionally we see certain people in the queue and there's a fine way we do it behind the scenes so that it doesn't affect the customers in the queue.
Because, for example, I go to the bank. I may not have a lot of money in my account, but because perhaps maybe I come on TV and with all my experiences in the media and marketing communication, so I tend to be given some preferential treatment, even though they know perhaps I have only 100 Ghana cedi in my account. That also presupposes it's the same line, because I have to be treated specially, either because they think I'm a respected member of the society.
Sometimes opinion leaders, banks look at, they think outside the box. Opinion leaders can be very influential. And these days of TV, radio, and technology, the least mistake you make can go viral on the net. So we also have a way, but as I say, there's a way around it without making the others feel degraded. There's a professional way to go about it that others would not know. Maybe you'll be singled out to say, oh, the customer would like to, manager would like to meet you. Can you step aside? And then we find a way and do these things behind the scenes so that such a person may be served on the side without others seeing that he's being singled out.
Banks have hundreds, if not thousands, of customers. And we know that you treat your frontline staff with a lot more professionalism because of the training that they tend to go through. But how then do you ensure there's constant interaction with your clients as well when you know you have that large number?
The interaction online, we have feedback where anybody can just assess and make comments, sometimes whether it's good or bad. As I say, silent killers are those who don't make comments and just walk away.
You mean the customers?
Yeah, customers. And those are the killers, as we call them. So it's better to make a suggestion, either with somebody else apart from the teller, so that any observations you have made is quickly taking notes. We also have a service quality department who also, in all banks, where they do mystery shopping, and they have feedback forms. Sometimes they employ third parties to come and sit in the banking hall, watch the transactions, how they are being treated, and then later on play back at a seminar or even at that same branch, and then they see even how telephones are responded to. These are done either directly through mystery shopping, online, and also during training.
Well, it's an interesting point you make, and you were talking consistently. You've mentioned online, and there's a question I want to ask. I actually intend asking at the close of the session, but now I just have to ask you. You know, back in the day, when we had to go to GCB, the foremost or the biggest bank at the time, they had a monopoly, and the teller would just have to be digging the fingers into a foamed water somehow and be counting the money, etc. And these days, when you have a lot more counting machines and technology is widespread, etc. If you look at that, if you have a dichotomy of the two, or you do analysis of the two, what advantages do they bring to the teller, or even a transaction between the teller and the customer in the banking hall? You do a pros and cons of before and after.
Okay, in the book I said that developing countries, we are in transition between the 18th century and the 21st century, because a lot of people are uneducated and you have to go through the manual interaction.
So you're saying we have improved, but we're still lagging? We
are still lagging.
Okay.
So you find the high-end range of products and services also in Ghana. If you go to Airport City or the banks there, everything is iZone, eZone, and everything. So you go to another place where it's right in the central business district, it is cash. We make sure that the tellers imbibe and adapt to every customer's needs. So we have to include the two. Otherwise, you will do high-end technology and leave those who don't want technology. Elderly people don't want technology, or they don't like the touch of a button. They want the personal interaction, and that is very key. That is why you have the face of the tellers also making sure that, so far as interaction is concerned, they are the face of the bank, and they still have to make sure that, that's the advantage there, the advantage of the human interaction. Somebody would go to a bank just to see the face of a teller and interact with the person just for small amounts instead of going to the ATM. It's a boost to that person for that morning. So the human interaction is also important, whatever stage, whether we are doing the 18th century banking or the 21st century banking.
Once these days, you tend to give a lot more financial advisory services, whether even requested or not requested. Are you, as a teller, also expected to give those sort of advice?
Yes.
Because, well, it could be an older person or somebody who may not have enough, but has enough to invest somewhat.
Exactly. It is true. Tellers have gone beyond just serving customers with cash, paying checks, and receiving money. These days, tellers are now becoming sellers. They identify, spot those who could access other products. For example, somebody always comes to pay in and ask for balance. If you have a smartphone, why don't you log on? You can go to ATM, check balances, do internal transfer without filling forms for internal transfer. So tellers are supposed to spot these ones, but when they are doing the cross-selling, they should not waste other customers' time. Quickly, they can give the lead to the sales or customer service people to take up the matter, and then they sit back and then they enjoy those services. So it is their function now to also become sellers, because electronic banking is making tellers less and less relevant. So since most of them are also from tertiary institutions, they have masters, they think outside the box, they're supposed to be analytical and know the banking principles and all that, and make even recommendations. We make sure that they do everything and imbibe to make sure that the customers are still key.
So Alberta, you saying that tellers are becoming less and less irrelevant. I hope you're not saying that we're going to have robots serving customers in the future. Could be possible.
It is possible.
All right.
But since we are in Africa and still in the developing country, that is a matter of time.
We have to be wrapping up on our discussions. Right. There's a chapter you have on fraud, etc.
Exactly.
At what point do you make the conclusion that a fraud has been committed?
Okay. Branch operations involves call over or checking every day. And sometimes even during the day, online you can check whatever is happening. At the end of the day, there's call over or the next morning. And these are the times that we are able to identify. Sometimes we rather try to prevent. So during the day, supervisors also check transactions to make sure that whatever has gone out or in is as it is. And it's more of a preventive method. And there are instances where there are internal frauds perpetrated by bank staff. And there is a chapter where we try to prevent these people from also getting involved in it.
And it's on page 71, it is chapter 7. So when these activities are identified, fraud, etc., you, because of your confidentiality and, well, I don't know whether your reclusiveness in many respects, don't want the public to be in the know. Just because you want to protect your brand or your image? Is that it?
That is one concern.
Because hardly you see a bank prosecuting a staff for something. It really happens. But of course, they'll take the security people there because I've interacted with some of my mates who are bankers, etc. You
find that these days, banks, there are internal processes for sanctioning people. And even after sanctioning, in some cases, when it's fraud, they're handed over to the
but it's not publicized. But somebody defaults a bank, it's adequately
there are cases where now we are encouraging these cases to come out. They have to report to Bank of Ghana, obviously. And there are cases whereby it is a preventive and sanctioning method by letting customers also be aware that these are the possible ways that they can avoid bank staff also getting involved in defrauding them.
Okay, so by this very book, the 21st Century Bank Teller Strategic Partner, I get the insight that you're concluding that the teller is not the old person who is serving only the customer. We used to think perhaps not very much educated and all, but now a very sophisticated and more creative person. Is that
exactly? Exactly.
So this book is for all bankers?
It's for all bankers,
and
actually.
Customers who also want
and
to know.
It's a beginning of a series that will be coming, and it's for all bankers to appreciate the work of tellers, help them, train them, and also understand the concepts behind the decisions that bank staff also take, especially in the banking hall.
Where are you currently retailing this very book?
Okay, we are launching it on the 5th, this Thursday at Alisa, and from Monday we have 2 hotlines. What we want to do for the first week is actually give out the hotlines where you can call, and we will deliver, depending on where you are, we'll deliver a personalized service. So the contact numbers, if I can give out.
No, you can't.
No, okay, all right.
It means I have to surcharge you for marketing. So
okay, no problem, no problem.
Oh, but don't worry about it. But so you are going to retail it, Legon Bookshop and all?
Yes, we have the Institute of Bankers, and we have the Banking College. We have another in Kumasi, and then we can do a few one-on-one.
Let me give you a tip, though. You can just write a lot of reviews and forwards on the book published, and then you can also get it sold on Amazon and the other websites.
That's the next level we are going to.
All right, thank you very much, Alberta Quarcoopoome. She's written a beautiful book titled "The 21st Century Bank Teller: A Strategic Partner," and I really love the color of the book, mauve and all. Looks beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're taking a break. When we come back, we'll have a lot more for you. In the meantime, we'll always get interactive. We have a page on Facebook, Joy News on TV, and also a handle on Twitter, Joy News on TV.